With over 30 seasons and hundreds of episodes to its name, The Simpsons have numerous installments that fans will declare as the absolute best ever episode. Ultimately, there will never be a consensus as to the greatest of all time, but a strong argument could definitely be made for the 10th episode of the 3rd season, Flaming Moe's. The installment, which first aired in November 1991, revolves around the premise of Moe getting famous due to a drink that Homer invented by accident that Moe takes credit for. The episode is one of the earliest installments of this series that embodied all the things that make The Simpsons one of the best shows of all time, with its constant stream of jokes, the inventive sequences and shot composition, with a solid plot that centers around a secondary character, highlighting that the series extends well beyond the titular family, as each and every citizen of Springfield have rich backstories and depth. But the episode didn't just serve as a vehicle for Moe to be fleshed out as a character. It also, surreptitiously, was utilized to criticize the very person who created, or at least is credited as creating, the very series itself. In the episode Flaming Moe's, after Moe runs out of beer, Homer tells him about a drink he invented, an alcoholic cocktail of cough medicine and fire that he calls the Flaming Homer. Moe soon steals the recipe, renaming it after himself and selling it at his bar. The drink is widely successful and dramatically increases Moe's business, making him and his bar famous. Understandably, Homer is bitter about Moe's betrayal. Eventually, when Moe is about to sell the recipe, Homer reveals the secret ingredient that no one can determine to everyone, causing Moe to lose all that he had gained due to Homer's drink. By the end of the episode, Homer and Moe reconcile after Moe's business has reverted back to being just another depressing bar.
Hey, this isn't faux dive. This is a dive.
Upon airing, the episode was an instant classic and considered a near perfect, if not outright perfect, installment of the series. Flaming Moe's was directed by Rich Moore with the assistance of Alan Smart after Moore's daughter was born during the production of the episode, causing him to miss several weeks of layout that Smart oversaw. Strangely, as iconic and important as Flaming Moe's is to the Simpsons universe, it wasn't written by a regular Simpsons staff member. Rather, the episode was written by Robert Cohen. As of June 2025, it's the only installment he's ever written for the series. But, nevertheless, he's been immortalized on the show, because, as you can immediately tell by looking at an image of him, he was the real-life inspiration for the character design of Milhouse.
I'm not a nerd, Bart. Nerds are smart.
Following his brief time with The Simpsons, Cohen would go on and have a prolific career in television, including work on the sketch comedy series The Ben Stiller Show between 1992 and 1995, and Mad TV between 1995 and 1996, in addition to numerous other projects over the years. Cohen had started out as production assistant on The Tracy Ullman Show during the late 80s and early 90s. When the series was canceled in 1990, Cohen moved to work on The Simpsons. Eager to break into writing, Cohen wrote a spec script that was a parody of the 1988 film Die Hard, in which the power plant is taken over by criminals, and Homer accidentally ends up saving the day.
Simpson 10, Terrorist 8.
Producers loved the idea, but for legal reasons they couldn't officially hire him to write the script. They did, however, approach him with a one-liner idea on an index card, which read, "Homer invents a drink and Moe steals it." With help from the other members of the writing staff, Cohen pieced together the basic story that ended up on screen. There were a few differences between Cohen's original draft and the end result, though. Most notably, Cohen had gone to great lengths to make Bart's crank calls to Moe a running joke, but the final version ended up including just a single instance of one of Bart's calls, which backfires.
Hello, this is Hugh Jazz.
Hi.
Beyond the main story, the episode was notable for a number of reasons, such as featuring the band Aerosmith, who were the first ever musical group to appear on The Simpsons.
Hello, St. Louis!
That's Springfield, Stephen.
Yeah, right.
Most notably, though, about Flaming Moe's is the various references to the hit TV sitcom Cheers, complete with a title sequence that parodies the show's iconic intro, along with the subplot of Colette, a worker Moe hires whose design, personality, and story arc were modeled heavily on that of Shelley Long's character on the show, Diane Chambers, from the early seasons of the series.
I mean, hell, I was crazy about you even when I hated you.
Given that the majority of Flaming Moe's takes place in a bar and revolves around a bartender, it made sense for the episode to parody Cheers, as the series revolves around a bartender and his customers.
Afternoon, everybody. Yo! Beer, Norm? Have I gotten that predictable? Good.
There was also the fact that the Simpsons writing staff had someone on it who was very familiar with the hit series. Although uncredited, Simpsons co-developer and the series showrunner at the time, Sam Simon, contributed a significant amount of Colette's dialogue as he'd previously worked on Cheers, and he was familiar with the character Colette was based on.
Bar
Barkeep, I couldn't help noticing your sign.
The one that says bartenders do it to your boss?
No, above that store-bought drollery.
Ultimately, Flaming Moe is how The Simpsons established the show's distinct style of wit and satire, as it embodied everything a classic Simpsons episode should have, with an engaging story, strong character development, and a rapid fire of inventive jokes.
Bart, are those liquor bottles?
Brought enough for everybody.
Much of this was thanks to Simon's influence, though he wasn't completely motivated by the idea of making the best piece of work that he could. Because, like Homer in the episode, he was also driven, at least in part, by bitterness, as the episode's premise gave him the perfect vehicle with which to publicly, but subtly, air his grievances with one of his closest colleagues.
What the?
Flaming Moe was the first installment of The Simpsons to feature Moe in a prominent role, which established him as an ostensibly likable, though deeply flawed and untrustworthy individual, which heavily informed his personality in the seasons that followed.
Right, hand him over.
Moe, what the?
Yeah, I rob now.
This focus on Moe is an early example of The Simpsons gradually expanding its supporting cast of townspeople into fully fleshed out characters in their own right. Prior to the episode, Moe had been little more than a stereotypical sullen bartender. Afterwards, though, Moe was seen as a sad person who had occasionally experienced success, then inevitably let it slip away due to his inability to do the right thing until it was too late.
Homer, no!
Cough syrup.
However, in addition to developing Moe as a character, the episode would also give the audience a glimpse into the working relationship of those behind the series, two people in particular, Simon and the show's creator, Matt Groening. The Simpsons TV series was developed for television by three men, Groening, James L. Brooks, and Simon. Simon was the least well-known of the three, who turned the animated shorts into one of the most critically acclaimed and beloved shows in the history of television. Ultimately, while Groening created the titular family, it was in fact Brooks and Simon who were largely responsible for taking Groening's characters and ideas and actually developing them into a show. However, Simon was arguably responsible for the bulk of the work. Officially, Simon served as one of the original co-showrunners of The Simpsons alongside Groening and Brooks for the first two seasons of the series, though Simon was arguably the most important and hands-on of the three. Although Al Jean and Mike Reiss had taken over the role of showrunners during the production of Flaming Moe, Simon was still a crucial creative presence on the show's staff. And when it came to the episode of Flaming Moe and the influence Simon had on the installment, it was widely believed amongst Simpsons staff that Moe's actions and motivations in the episode were Simon's thinly veiled criticism of Groening regarding how Simon felt that Groening had taken much of the credit that Simon himself deserved for making the show what it was.
If there was any justice, my face would be on a bunch of crappy merchandise.
Ultimately, Simon left The Simpsons at the end of the fourth season, due in large part to his issues with Groening, as their working relationship was pretty much always strained. Years after Flaming Moe was produced, in April 2013, during an interview with Guy Evans from the Smells Like Human Spirit podcast, Simon was asked if the premise of Flaming Moe was inspired by the tumultuous relationship that he had with Groening. That is, that Simon was effectively Homer, the true creator of The Simpsons, while Groening was Moe, the man who steals the idea and takes credit for it, because Groening had gotten much of the credit for developing The Simpsons, when it was in fact Simon who had done most of the work after he took Groening's two-dimensional characters and fleshed them out, with distinct personalities and backstories, before creating engaging and interesting stories around them. In answer to the question, Simon was polite, but also made it clear that there was at least some truth to the suggestion.
Damn right.
By the time Simon passed away at the age of 59 in March 2015, he'd accomplished a lot, especially in the television industry, having worked as a director, producer, and writer for many years. Even before joining The Simpsons, Simon had already worked on a variety of hit sitcoms, both live-action and animated. After graduating from Stanford University, Simon worked at Filmation Studios, during which he contributed to a number of shows, including the educational series Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, which ran from September 1972 to August 1985, consisting of 110 episodes and 5 specials over 8 seasons. During his time on the show, Simon wrote an episode, the success of which later led to him submitting a spec script for the hit live-action sitcom Taxi, about the misadventures of those who work at a taxi depot, which ran from September 1978 to June 1983, consisting of 114 episodes over 5 seasons. Impressed with his work, Simon was soon invited to join the show's writing staff, and between 1981 and 1983, he would author 13 episodes for the hit sitcom while also serving as the series showrunner for the 5th and final season. More importantly, though, is the fact that his time on Taxi started his working relationship with Brooks, as he was the co-creator of the series. Following the conclusion of Taxi, Simon then worked on a number of other live-action sitcoms, including, in addition to Cheers, the critically acclaimed series It's Garry Shandling's Show, based on the comedy of the titular star. The series ran from September 1986 to May 1990, consisting of 72 episodes over 4 seasons, but only ever gained a small but loyal fan base. Nevertheless, the series was praised critically for its inventiveness and subverting the expectations when it came to sitcoms, as the cast were aware that there were characters on a TV show and repeatedly broke the fourth wall to interact with the studio audience.
So if you're in a bad mood about your work, don't come in here and take it out on me and my audience. They've been here since 7 a.m.
Simon first got involved with The Simpsons as an executive producer back when they were shorts on The Tracy Ullman Show between April 1987 and May 1989. It was Simon and Brooks who made the fateful decision to try and expand the shorts into an actual TV series. And when it came time to expand Groening's relatively one-dimensional characters into multifaceted and relatable sitcom personalities, Simon was assigned to help Groening flesh out the initial bare-bone concept of a full show, given that Groening had no real experience in writing for television. Ultimately, Simon saw The Simpsons as his chance to fix what he didn't like about other cartoon shows he'd previously worked on. Officially, the reason Simon left The Simpsons was that he wasn't enjoying it anymore and wanted to work on other projects. Up until his death, he remained credited as an executive producer despite never working on the show following the end of the 4th season in 1993. After leaving the animated series, Simon continued to work in the television industry as he returned to live-action sitcoms. After leaving The Simpsons, Simon created The George Carlin Show, which revolved around the legendary comedian as he portrayed a taxi driver, though the majority of the show was set in a bar.
People who have hope, they're constantly worried about when it's going to kick in. They don't get to have a good time.
The series received decent reviews, but only ran for 2 seasons, consisting of 27 episodes from January 1994 to July 1995. Simon then worked intermittently on a number of hit shows, usually as a director, most notably Friends and The Drew Carey Show. From the early 2000s to his death, Simon split his time between television, radio, and charity work. In late 2012, Simon was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Although he was given just 3 to 6 months to live, he survived multiple years after his original prognosis. Ultimately, Simon was remembered as being fundamental to the success of The Simpsons, though few outside the industry truly appreciated just how much credit he deserved, yet never really received. Later, in June 2018, former Simpsons showrunner Mike Reiss released a memoir of his career, Springfield Confidential, which largely focused on his time on the iconic TV series. And it was one of the first time a number of behind-the-scenes secrets about the show were revealed, and that anyone from the series had gone into detail about Simon's motivation behind making Flaming Moes and how justified they were or not.
Pardon me, are you the genius behind the Flaming Moe?
Why, yes,
I'm your man.
When The Simpsons became successful as a full-fledged sitcom, Simon resented the media attention that Groening received, particularly the praise Groening received for the show's writing, as Simon felt that Groening's involvement was limited in that area, so much so that Simon believed that he himself should have been getting credit for the series' success. And Simon's frustrations were understandable because his contributions were indeed underappreciated by those outside the industry. Ultimately, Simon ended up doing most of the work that led to The Simpsons being so great, as he assembled and led the initial team of writers responsible for the golden era of the series from the early to late 90s. And Simon either created or expanded upon much of The Simpsons' existing universe. Simon was largely responsible for giving characters depth because he understood and repeatedly emphasized that, despite being cartoons, Springfield citizens still needed to have personality and heart rather than just having 1 or 2 characteristics to string a bunch of jokes around.
Oakley dokley.
Oakley dokley.
Simon made sure that The Simpsons characters were motivated by their emotions and their flaws, something that he always emphasized for the writers to keep in mind, leading to much more intricate, relatable, and memorable characters and storylines.
I gave up fame and breakfast for my marriage. I fought it for 6 hours. He says one word and I toss it back. And you're telling me our marriage is in trouble?
Additionally, Simon designed a number of the show's iconic characters, including Mr. Burns, Dr. Hibbert, Chief Wiggum, Eddie, Lou, and Bleeding Gums Murphy. Simon was also the one who made the crucial creative decision to record lines with all the actors in the room together in order to develop chemistry and play off one another as they performed, like radio shows used to do, rather than having them read off their lines separate from each other, which was commonplace in animation at the time. Simon was also responsible for a number of iconic jokes in the show, including the long-running gag about Smith's sexuality, as Simon suggested that the show should make him gay, but only occasionally reference it.
What'll you be doing, Smithers? Something gay, no doubt?
What?
Simon also pitched the classic Land of Chocolate sequence from the 11th episode of the 3rd season, Burns Sells the Power Plant, when German investors buy the business, which first aired in December 1991. In the installment, Homer imagines what Germany must be like after his new bosses mention that they're from Germany, the land of chocolate.
Chocolate, half price.
Simon was also heavily involved in the writing of some of the best and most important installments of The Simpsons, such as 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes in Every Fish, the 4th episode of the 2nd season, which first aired in November 1990. In the installment, Mr. Burns runs for governor to prevent his power plant from being closed after it's discovered that he's been polluting the town. The episode is widely considered one of the best of all time, not just because it's a perfect example of the golden era of The Simpsons with its solid writing, character development, and rapid-fire jokes, but also for its biting satire of politics.
Here's your headline, Phil. Burns can't swallow own story.
Simon was also the person who thought to adapt Edgar Allan Poe's classic 1845 poem, The Raven, for the final segment of the original Treehouse of Horror. The only significant pushback Simon received over the suggestion was from Groening, who felt that it would be pretentious. Despite Groening's reservations, though, the segment was produced and received acclaim upon its release, as it illustrated that The Simpsons could be smart, funny, and poignant, all while paying respect to one of the greatest pieces of American literature in the form of a parody tribute.
Quoth the Raven.
Eat my shorts.
And Groening's reservations about a crucial creative decision by Simon that ended up being great is emblematic of the two's working relationship. During Simon's time on the show, his relationship with Groening was known for its strain. Although the two had initially worked well together, things between Simon and Groening often became volatile over creative differences. Most of all, though, Groening had issues with Simon's approach to the series. Although Simon always believed that the Simpsons sitcom could be great, he also had little to no faith that it would actually be successful. In fact, he was certain that it would be a failure, something which he frequently joked about with the writing staff as he adopted the motto 13 and out, a reference to the fact that the network had ordered 13 episodes for the first season, and that was all the episodes Simon expected to make.
I said, let's just do 13 shows that we'll like, and we'll have tapes of them.
Ultimately, embracing this pessimistic mentality proved to be positive because it freed a lot of people involved in the show, especially Simon, to take much bigger creative risks, rather than trying to play it safe in order to ensure that the series got renewed.
Maneuvers. This is the most fun I've ever had in my life.
However, understandably, Groening was offended by Simon's casual, cynical approach to the show, not only because it implied a lack of faith in Groening's material, but also because it highlighted Simon's indifference to Groening's career. Having already established himself in the television industry, Simon would have been fine if The Simpsons had indeed failed, as he just moved on to his next project. Conversely, Groening was fearful that if the show failed, it would ruin his reputation, his one big chance to make it in television, and he would never work in the industry again. Years after last working together, in 2001, Groening reflected on his relationship with Simon, describing him as brilliantly funny and one of the smartest writers he had ever worked with. But Groening also said that Simon was unpleasant and mentally unbalanced. And, in retrospect, Simon acknowledged that Groening had a point. By his own admission, Simon was often hard to work with. He admitted that every show he'd ever worked on turned him into a monster and made him hate himself, which he would often take out on those he interacted with. And Groening wasn't the only person involved in The Simpsons who Simon had a feud with. Simon also had issues with Brooks and his production company, Gracie Films. While working on The Simpsons, Simon and Brooks co-created the series Sibs about the relationship of 3 sisters. The series ran from September 1991 to April 1992, consisting of 22 episodes, though 11 were left unaired. Later, Simon worked on the series Phenom about a tennis wonder kid, which aired from September 1993 to May 1994, consisting of 22 episodes. Simon hadn't wanted to work on either series, both of which were cancelled after a single season. He had effectively been forced to work on the shows due to his contractual obligations, which put a strain in his relationship with Brooks, and ultimately led Simon to cut ties with Gracie Films when he walked away from The Simpsons.
Kiss my curvy butt goodbye.
Ironically, years after making Flaming Moe, Simon expressed uneasiness with the credit he'd received for The Simpsons' success. In retrospect, pretty much everyone involved in the early years of The Simpsons seems to agree that Simon was indeed largely responsible for the success of the show in regards to fundamental aspects of the series that made it great, such as the depth of character, engaging stories, and the creative chemistry of the staff and crew. But the show almost certainly wouldn't have become what it did without the contributions of all 3 of the show's developers, Brooks, Groening, and Simon. By all accounts, Simon contributed the most to the show, but Brooks brought years of industry experience, while Groening brought his characters and a fresh take on the television industry, particularly in regards to animated series and what they could be. The critical success of his second series, Futurama, proves that Groening absolutely deserves his place in television history and suggests that his contributions to The Simpsons in the early years, though relatively minimal, were fundamental to the show's success, as he always had a great appreciation for subversion, depth of character, and taking creative chances.
I'm gonna go build my own theme park with blackjack and hookers. In fact, forget the park.
Ultimately, despite the issues that Simon had with both Brooks and Groening, it was the three of them working together that made The Simpsons iconic, even if the best Simon could ever do in terms of praise for Groening was a backhanded compliment.
That's right, money. Your money's happiness is all that money's.
Ultimately, unlike in the Flaming Moe's episode, there was no clear hero or villain in Simon and Groening's conflict. Just two talented but flawed individuals who had strong creative differences with one another that they simply couldn't overcome. Also, unfortunately, it doesn't appear as though Simon and Groening ever truly put their differences aside like Homer and Moe did by the end of Flaming Moe's.
Hey, this drink is delicious, and my phlegm feels looser. What do you call it?
Well, it's called a Flaming
Moe. It's called the Flaming Moe. That's right, a Flaming Moe. My name is Moe, and I invented it. That's why it's called a Flaming Moe. What? What are you looking at, Homer? It's a Flaming Moe. I'm Moe.
Hello, this is Hugh Jazz.